on this computer. And start webinar. Hi, everyone who's coming in. We're gonna wait a few minutes to get going, but thanks for coming. All right, 6:01, I'm sure more people are gonna start coming in, but welcome everyone to the Land Stewardship Series. Hope everyone's Wednesday is going well so far. And we just wanted to thank everyone for coming and give you a little background. We usually host these events in person, but because of COVID, we are starting to test out different ways that we can get this information out to everyone. And normally these speakers will have a much longer time to go over topics. So this is kind of a condensed version of all the information, but hopefully you can stick around after the presentation and our speakers will be able to answer any of the questions that you have. The chat isn't enabled for this webinar tonight, but anything that you want to ask, just put into the Q&A box and we'll get around to it at the end. And any resources or information that our panelists that are speaking tonight give out, we will post on our website where this video will also be posted as well as on our YouTube channel. And my name's Fiona. I'm the Big Sky Watershed Corps member at the Flathead Conservation District this year. And I'm joined by Sam and Haley, who are also at the Flathead Conservation District. And just so you know, yeah, so your video and your audio is off tonight. But if you do want to ask a question at the end using your speaker, we'll be able to give you that option. You're just there's like a little icon to raise your hand and you can do that. And then we can take you off mute and you can ask anything you want to ask. The presentation will probably go about 45 minutes and then depending on how many questions we get, we'll stick around for 15, 20 minutes, however long that takes. And after the video, you're going to get sent a survey. And if you can take a couple minutes to fill that out, that'd be awesome because it's very good information for us to continue to host these events and make them worth your while. And then, yeah, next week is the last one. And that's about noxious weed ID and control. So if that is interesting to you, please feel free to come by. And yeah, so we'll start getting into tonight's topic is septic system management. And we are joined by Jillian and Kate. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves and give a little background to why they're here today talking to you. And yeah, hope you enjoy the next hour or so.
Thanks, Fiona. My name is Kate Cassidy. I'm working at Flathead City County Environmental Health Department. I've been there going on about 15 years. I've been a registered sanitarian in the state of Montana for about 20 years now. My background is University of Montana, go Grizz, with a microbiology degree. So I've lived in Montana going on 42 years now. So yeah, I'm excited to be part of this. You know, 5 years ago, it was started with the MSU extension. Pat McQuinn had asked to do a small land use advisory panel group, and that's kind of how it started, and it's been growing since. And I think this is a good way to get people involved with the Zoom, because there's been a need for you know, getting more people involved. So yeah, thank you for inviting me, and I'll let Jill talk a little bit.
Hi everyone, my name is Jillian. I'm a Big Sky Watershed Corps member as well, serving with the Montana Association of Conservation Districts. And I'll be talking a little bit about a new septic maintenance reimbursement program once Kate is finished with her presentation.
Okay.
So Kate, take it away.
All right. So our topic tonight that I'm going to present is a little bit more on septic systems. So that's kind of my expertise at the county health department, is septic systems. Just a second here. I'm looking at another slideshow on my computer, so I'm just trying to get some of this stuff together here. All right. So just a little history. Back in 1895, we had our county commissioners decided to have a board of health. So our board of health promotes and protects the health and wellness of the people within the county. The board of health passes regulations and policies for the benefit of public health. So you've probably seen a lot more about board of health in the last year of, you know, in the news and that. So we go with our board of health. We meet with them quite often for regulation changes and health promotion. Okay. So a little bit history about the regulations. So we didn't really start permitting. We weren't really mandated to permit septic systems till 1972 when the Clean Water Act came about. So prior to the Federal Water Pollution Act of 1972, there was little national regulatory control of sewage treatment and discharge. There was limited oversight, and it was provided by the United States Public Health Services and by a few states. But for the most part, it was aimed solely at public health protection rather than addressing environmental concerns. So 1972, the EPA pretty much mandated all states and to do some type of regulations on wastewater. So we in Flathead County adopted some of those regulations into our wastewater program, and we had a few permits, septic systems before 72, but it was really mandated from the Clean Water Act that we started our permitting process. Okay. So just a little bit about treatment, wastewater in the Flathead. This is actually a municipal system in Kalispell. So this is some of the treatment systems. You'll see other treatments throughout municipalities. They do a little differently, but pretty much shows you some dirty water there and how it comes in dirty and it goes out pretty clean. This is Kalispell treatment system, and it discharges into Ashley Creek. And it goes in there pretty clean after it goes through all the treatment process. Okay. So again, in 1972, Flathead County adopts the subsurface on-site sewage treatment disposal regulations. And at that time, we have probably 8 pages of regulations, and now we've got close to 24 pages of the regulations. So it's grown over time. Okay. So a little bit function of on-site septic systems, maintenance of the wastewater systems. We're going to go through septic systems and the homeowner's responsibility, what they can do to keep their systems running good. And then some of why we cite certain drain fields, where we cite them. Groundwater is one of the things we look at, making sure we don't cite drain fields in high groundwater areas. And then, of course, protecting and maintaining your septic system, what you can do as a homeowner to maintain your system. Okay. So municipal wastewater treatment facilities have a variety of infrastructure and personnel in place to keep them operating. And these systems are regulated under the Clean Water Act to prevent and to mitigate contamination of surface waters. And private septic systems are also treating human waste and are regulated to some degree during installation. And that's where myself and some of our staff at the county, making sure everybody meets those standards and regulations. So they get inspected at time of installation. But then once they're installed, it's typically the homeowner's responsibility to keep them operating and getting the septic tanks pumped and making sure their drain fields are operating like they should. Okay. So again, Flathead County wastewater, we have many types of different on-site septic systems. We've got individual, being mostly homeowner type individuals, shared, maybe a couple different structures to one drain field, multiple user ones where there's many structures connected to a drain field. And then of course, we've got some big public systems out there too. Some people don't realize that, okay, here's an example, our Glacier Park International Airport, that has a huge drain field, and that's a public system. So, and then of course, we've got the municipal systems, Kalispell, Whitefish, Columbia Falls, and then there's some of the sewer districts. They're not municipal, but they're a district. Big Fork, Lakeside Summers, and Evergreen are sewer districts. Okay. So original wastewater treatment system, right? We've come a long way. Here's our outhouse from years ago. So our original on-site wastewater treatment system, dilution is the solution back then. So that may have worked then, but we've come a long way, and people living on the, there weren't as many people living on the planet back then, so we'd have to do better. So we're doing better. All right. Okay. So a little bit of history about some of some contaminants of what can happen with bad water, or sewage. So back in 1854, Dr. John Snow, I'm not sure if many of you have heard of cholera, right? So back in the epidemic days of 1813 through 1853, a lot of people died because of cholera, and it was drinking sewage water. So Dr. Snow actually found that it was contaminated sewage that was contaminating these wells, and figured out it's a microorganism that's doing this. So that's one of the reasons why we cite drain fields not so close to wells or drinking water supplies, because it can kill people. So there's reasons why we have rules and regulations, and we kind of adhere to that. Okay. So septic systems are better than an outhouse. Over the years, they've become a little more sophisticated. These systems treat wastewaters to some degree, and then discharge back into the soils to be treated. These systems do not remove everything from wastewater, and they still depend on dilution to a certain degree. Septic systems have two primary components. The septic tank is your primary treatment. And then your drain field, as it applies to the soils for more treatment there. So making sure your septic tanks are on good working order, that's a good function right there. Like I said, that's your primary treatment for sewage, is a good working septic tank. Okay. And the septic tank is the first step in the process. Once the water leaves the house, the tank serves to separate the solids and the floatables from the wastewater. So fat and grease float and solids sink. The solids are broken down through time, through anaerobic digestion, and partially treated wastewater is discharged to the soil for your application area. Septic tanks must provide enough time for the wastewater to reside in the tank for the separation process to take place. So we like to see your holding time from your solids at least 2.5 days to make to get your bacteria to kind of break down those solids. So we look at that, making sure you're sizing a tank is enough capacity for, let's say, a 2 or 3 bedroom home. We want to make sure we have enough size of that tank so you're using, it's going to hold, for 2.5 days or longer. So the longer it holds, you get more treatment with your breaking down of your solids. Okay. And then just a little bit here about another type of septic tank. We've got a single chamber or a baffled tank. So in Flathead County, we'll see more of the baffled tanks because on that second chamber is usually where we have a pump. As of 2005, everything is pumped to a drain field. The single chamber, we still see some of those. They're the older systems, and we see those more with the gravity system. Some other counties will see more of the single chambers, where Flathead County, we do have the double chamber. Okay. And again, modern construction of tanks, effluent filters. We look at making sure those are put in tanks. As of 2002, every tank that was put in from then had to have a filter. And that just keeps your solids from going out into your drain field and less likely to clog up. All right, okay. And then a little bit more of a schematic of how it looks on a tank here in Flathead County with a pump. You've got your 2 chambers, and then you've got your pump on the right, which would pump out the effluent. No solids would go into that part of the chamber. We want to prevent solids to going into that, where the filter would prevent that. And then out to the drain field. So your drain fields can really go below the tank, or we could site them above the tank on your property. So just depending on where your house is sitting and where your tank's going to go, and then it's just you're pumping it below or wherever you want on your property. It's just sizing the tank or sizing the pump correctly. We get questions like that a lot. People like, well, my drain field's going to be way above my home. Well, that's okay. We just do a bigger pump. So okay. And then again, just a kind of a schematic of a drain field detail. We want, your trenches maybe 36 inches in depth. We've got gravel, some clean gravel underneath, anywhere from 6 inches to 10 inches of clean gravel underneath your piping. And then again, adding more gravel on top of that, and a filter or a untreated paper or fabric that goes between the above that last layer of gravel, and then you cover it with the soils. Native soils are fine. Okay. And a little bit more of some drain fields. This is more of an indication of a gravity type system that I'm showing you here. At the drain field, water is discharged, or not really water, but contaminated water, effluent, is discharged to the soil for the final treatment. Gravity systems with perforated pipe and gravel were the classic method for drain field construction in many parts of the the world, but just recently, like I said, 2005, where we don't allow gravity. Effluent is discharged down through the gravel until it reaches the soil surface, where a biomat will typically develop. And this biomat will consume some constituents from the waste and filter others out. So the wastewater that moves through this biomat is then on its way back to groundwater. So if we site a drain field correctly and we look at the soils, anything after 3 feet underneath that surface of where those laterals are should be clean soils. You shouldn't have any type of contaminated soils. We see some soils that are coarse, gravelly, coarse, cobbly, and at that time we ask people to use a sand layer to kind of slow that percolation down so it gets better treatment. So we like to get more treatment that way. Okay. And then again, some leach lines with gravelless chambers, just another type of drain field that we've seen out there. These are popular in some areas of the county that you can use. Okay. And then the progressive development of the biomat, right? So over time, it's eventually going to build up, and then it kind of creeps and fails. So this is usually what we've seen with the more of the gravity type systems. It's more of a creep fail. You get your biomat and it builds up, and then it'll start failing. So standard drain fields work through a process of continuous failure. The effluent enters the drain field by trickling through the pipe to the ground, and the biomat forms, which clogs the soil pores. Infiltration capacity is really based on the biomat and not the soil. Biomat can become fairly impervious and to flow through it. Eventually, the infiltrative capacity of the entire drain field may be so slow, and it causes the system to back up into a home and force the effluent to a ground surface. A typical drain field lasts for a good 20 to 30 years if people take care of it. So very important to take care of your drain fields. Okay. So this is typically what we see more in the pressure dose drain fields in Flathead County. More evenly distributed. It's not just a creep fail, it's pump turns on and it spreads throughout the whole drain field. Okay. And a mound system, an engineered type mound system that you'll see out driving around. You might see some of those, or maybe some of you folks have it. For some reason, it's not showing the other picture on that. But you'll see some mounds out there, and it's probably had to do a mound because of high groundwater. So again, making sure we, get that treatment underneath for the soils. We don't have high groundwater, and it's contaminating that aquifer. Okay. Oh, there it is. So that's a mound system it looks like a school. We've got several schools here in the valley that have these mounds. Okay. And another type of system is called a recirculating filter. It's a level 2 system. This one here is an Advantex. And what it does, it just breaks down a little bit more. You'll see that green container on top of a tank, and it recirculates the effluent and just breaks down, your bacteria just breaks down the biomat a little bit more, gives you a reduction on that. There are a number of advanced treatment systems on the market, which are required in some areas of the US due to groundwater quality issues. And these systems function to remove additional contaminants from wastewater before releasing it into the soil. As of today, we've got a little over 200, about 240 level 2 systems in Flathead County. We've got some large systems where we've got communities that are on them. And then of course, there's some where it's just single family homes. So, and there is a cost to these, a yearly cost for maintenance, because they are, you know, there's this, it's a package plant. So they do have a little bit more maintenance to them. Okay. So again, system inspection and maintenance, what we can do to inspect and maintain our septic systems is the responsibility of the homeowner. Once the system is put in the ground and we're done reviewing that and approving it, it's up to the homeowner to take care of that. Okay. Okay, Jill.
One moment, I'm having trouble advancing the slide.
Okay.
I might have to
All
stop
right.
sharing and reshare.
Okay. Slide 24.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, sorry about
All right.
that.
Yep, thank you. So septic systems need to be pumped anywhere from 2 to 5 years, depending on the number of users and the size of the tank. And as the solids and floatables build up, there's less of an area in the tank for the separation process to take place, and more solids will begin to make it through to the drain field. So that's a good information that you don't want those solids to enter your drain field. It'll start plugging up your drain field. Okay. So to pump a system can be anywhere, it can be pretty costly. It's probably even gone up in price since I did this 3 years ago. So anywhere from $275 for your average 1,000-gallon tank to even up to $400 or $500 now. So your cost to maintain and pump your septic tank as compared to a new drain field cost, quite significant. So it's pretty good insurance just to make sure your tanks are pumped and operating like it should. Okay. And again, just showing what the septic pumper is looking for. They have to find the riser and just pumping that out and looking for the filter, making sure there's a filter in there. And a certified pumper should be hired for pumping that, again, like I said, every 2 to 5 years. Thank you. Okay. And do you know some of the questions that we get calling up from to the health department? I need a diagram of where my septic system is. So do you know where your septic system is? Do you know where your tank is? Do you know when the last time it was pumped? Where's the drain field? And if you don't, and if you have a permit, we can look this up for you, and it'd be good to have a copy of that. We have a website that you can look that information up yourself. And at the end of somewhere in the slideshow, I've got that web page that you can look that up. So address would work, or your assessor number, something like that, to look that up. Okay. Oh, there it is. There's where you can look that up. So on our website, flatheadhealth.org, you can look up, and I've got a little highlight there on the yellow, looking up your permitted septic system. And then when you click on that, it brings you into Flathead County's GIS department, and then you'll just have to, there's some information there that they're asking you for on your about property. And if you need help finding that, we can direct you at the county how to find that. Okay. All right, and then you'll see out in your yard, hopefully you've got some risers that you can see out there, some lids to access your tank so you can get it pumped out. Okay. And then again, just another tank. Okay. There it is. And then we've got different types of lids out there too. You'll see that the green lids, you'll see those, and making sure the lids are secure, because we don't want, that's a safety issue if they aren't secure. In the past, we've had an accident in Evergreen. Oh, it's been a number of years ago, where a kid fell into one of these septic tanks because the lid was not secure. So make sure you know where your lids are at and that they are secure. And if they're broken, they can be replaced. So it's just a big safety issue. And then looking at the sludge sampler to see the thickness of your sludge, because you don't want that building up where you get too much sludge and then it's going to go out into your drain field. Okay. And again, the inlet of your tank, sewer inlet into the septic tank. Note that the covered vent on the T, this prevents proper venting of the septic tank. So you want to make sure that it's not clogged up. You get sewer gases going back into your home. Okay. And then again, check conditions of the tank, check their concrete, making sure it's, not too corroded. If your tanks are not venting properly, corrosion of the tank may be accelerated. So the concrete lid on the left is more corroded than the one on the right. So it's just showing that there's something going on in the tank if your concrete is it's corroding more so than it should. Okay. And then the outlet, this is actually the outlet of the septic tank. View the outlet end of the tank with the riser in place and the effluent filter. So there is an effluent filter in there, and then you'll just take that filter out and clean that periodically. And we recommend you do it twice a year, just to see what you're putting in your tank, and maybe you need to do it more. And maybe you don't need to do it as often. Okay. So just the inspection inside indicates system backing up issues. Fluctuating water levels in the tank can indicate backup issues in the drain field. So that's something if you're, as a homeowner, don't want to be looking into your septic tank. There are some people out there that do this for a living. It's their job. They go ahead and clean out septic tanks and making sure that the baffles are in place and everything's operating like it should. So there are septic pumpers that will do this for you. Okay. And then just a scum layer on the surface of a tank. That's typical. That's a typical tank. Okay. And then the effluent filters, there's many types of effluent filters out there. It should be removed for cleaning, like I said, about every 6 months or more or less, depending on your usage of your system. This can be done by your septic pumper, or there's other companies out there too that just clean filters. So maybe you don't need to have your tank pumped, but they do, there's people that do just cleaning filters. Okay. And again, another filter. And cleaning it right in that same chamber is fine. You don't need to take it out and scrub it out on your lawn or anything, just hosing it right in that same chamber. All right. And then other filter types. Okay. So signs of a failing septic system, right? It's slow. You'll hear some gurgling and maybe it's backing up into your home. Your drain field is surfacing or pooling. Ground is mushy, although springtime might be hard to tell, but we see a lot of failures in the spring because people keep putting it off and thinking it'll be fine, but then the spring really kind of advances that failure. You'll be smelling odor. A good functioning drain field, you won't have that odor smell. So that's an indication too that you've got a failure going. Okay. And then just keeping your records for your drain field in your tank. It's important to have those records. And like I said, if you need your permit, we can get a copy of your permit and go online and you can get those records. Okay. So leaks cause overuse of the drain field, right? It'll cause premature failure. Toilets are a common type of leak in a house, which can overload a septic system with water. And if your toilet runs when it hasn't been flushed, it is leaking. You can also detect leaks by placing a dye in the tank, and we've done that on numerous occasions to see if it's leaking. And if the dye enters the bowl without flushing, the toilet's leaking, right? You have a problem. And all leaks should be addressed to extend the septic system's lifespan. Seen quite a few failures where they do have leaky faucets. One was just a few years ago, I looked at a system in the Martin City area that was leaking, and they didn't seem to think that it was. Well, they had a septic pumper out there every 2 days, and they said they weren't using any water. Well, their fixtures were all leaking, and they figured it was about 250 gallons a day that those fixtures were leaking. So yeah, that will put a strain on your drain field if you have leaky fixtures. Okay. What not to put down your toilet. So there's ways to discard your pharmaceuticals. Just package them up. They can take them at the sheriff's office and some of the fire departments, and police take those products. So don't throw your pharmaceuticals down the toilet. That's not what we want to do. Coffee grounds, and then even garbage disposal. We tell people that are putting in new systems, don't put in a garbage disposal in your home, because you don't need to do that. Just throw it down, throw it in the garbage. And of course, feminine products, chemicals, and other foreign objects. Okay. Making sure septic safe paper will degrade easier than the traditional paper in the tank. Phosphate-free detergent will reduce the nutrient load from your wastewater system. And then household cleaners can be used, but should be used sparingly. So, you can use a little bit of bleach in your home and cleaning, with your laundry and that, but don't be putting a lot down your system. Large amounts of bleach down the drain can throw off the septic biology. So just be sparingly on that. Okay. And then what about additives, right? So additives are not necessary. Human bodies have plenty of bacteria to the tanks. So people think, you know, like they need to go buy this Ridex. It's not necessary. That's just throwing money away. Okay. And what type of vegetation do you want to put over your drain field? Grass is fine, you know, some flowers, some undercover. Gardens, maybe not so deep on your gardens. One things that you do want to avoid, alfalfa, that's deep rooted, and they're going to seek going into your drain field, those roots and that. And then other types of vegetation that we say no, you know, willows or poplars or cottonwoods, some of these other types of trees, just don't plant them near your drain field. Lilac bushes, that's another one you don't want to plant close to your drain field. Okay. Okay. It should be, there we go. Okay. At this home, willows were planted very close to the septic system, and the roots from these trees caused the original drain field to fail. The second photo there shows the inlet pipe of the septic tank, and roots have accessed the tank around the pipe. And in this view, the roots have been cut away, but this tank will need maintenance to keep the roots in check. The owner is making plans to have the trees removed, or they'll be needing a new drain field. Okay. And here's just a diagram of where a drain field is located and how some of the drain field is functioning and some isn't. So you can kind of see where the lush grass is over maybe 3/4 of the drain field, and then the not so dotted, you know, where the dotted lines are, there's some of the drain fields not getting used. So that's one of the reasons why Flathead County went to a pressure dose system, because that way it gets evenly distributed throughout the whole drain field. It's not just a portion of the drain field. You're using the whole field. Okay. And then again, the unused portion of that drain field. So it's not really working correctly. Okay. And then here's some surfacing effluent that we've seen out there on a failed drain field. This is a health hazard. A field can also fail without visible indications if water is not being evenly distributed across the field and is infiltrating into the groundwater. Okay. And this is actually a failed system a few years ago where we did a dye test. Excuse me. And it came out, I did a blue dye, and this is showed up into the field. So I think this had a metal tank too. All right, and this is a failed infiltrator system. This is the failed system. It's all packed with solids. And this was probably 7 years old. Types of soils just weren't conducive to using this type of using these types of chambers that are called the infiltrator Gravelless Chambers. So they're good for certain types of soils, but in this case, in tighter soils, it just not good function. Okay. And then a little bit about what is in your wastewater, right? So we've got viruses. We got fecal coliform, nitrogen, phosphorus. And then if you look at the raw sewage, particles per million, and then 3 feet, like I said, about 3 feet below a drain field, your laterals, you wouldn't see all these particles and bacteria because it's being treated with the soils. So siting drain fields, we go out and do test holes and we look at the soils, we look at a soils profile to find out what types of soils you have, and then siting the drain field. And then if you've got coarse soils, and then like I said, we want to probably put some sands to kind of slow that perk rate down. So we looking at your types of soils is very good information for us for siting your drain field. There's lots of different types of soils here in Flathead County. We've got anywhere from coarse to a silty clay loam to sands. There's a variety. So looking at that when we site drain fields. Okay. So again, septic systems and groundwater quality. Septic systems recharge groundwater, and if systems are not built correctly or maintained, they will not function properly to treat the waste. So we've got to make sure that they're, we've got that good separation from groundwater, bedrock, a clay layer, just making sure that they're sited correctly. Okay. A little bit more about siting of septic systems. As we see more construction and building and people moving into the valley, you'll see more septic systems, and of course they need wells. So we're making sure that where the wells are and setbacks from other drain fields, neighboring drain fields, neighboring wells. So this is all some of that we have to look at when we site drain fields, not just your own home, but the neighboring properties as well. Okay. So again, septic systems and drinking water, right? All those folks that are living outside the city limits, most of them have wells and a septic system. And how does our groundwater move through these areas? And then, is it siting the drain field and well locations? We want to make sure that it's down gradient from your well. We all live downstream from somebody. Just making sure we site them correctly. Okay. So again, siting, we're looking at the soils. Designing and siting systems correctly is a critical aspect of protecting groundwater quality. It is also critical for homeowners to do their part to maintain the systems once they are installed. And I can't stress that enough. It's up to the homeowners once we get done siting that and permitting it to maintain that. Okay. And 10 tops of reasons for septic failure: driving over tree roots, like I showed you in one of the slides, putting things down flushing things down your toilet that you shouldn't, grease, use your trash can. You don't have to put everything down your kitchen sink, and then installing incorrectly septic systems. Okay, and not maintain them. Salts and chemicals from water softeners. We see that build up in drain fields. So if you have a softener that's not functioning correctly and it's has too much brine and backwash, that will have a premature failure on your drain field as well. Extensive use of garbage disposals. Use it for just, if you do have a garbage disposal in a septic system, just use it for scraps. Don't be putting all types of stuff down it. And poor drainage of your siting of drain fields, and of course hydraulic overload. When I say hydraulic overload, I'm thinking more of like, again, leaky fixtures, right? Okay, and then here's some just some additional resources that people can go on for siting of wells, some maintenance on drain fields, and some stuff on with DEQ on what they've got, some literature. Okay, And then if there's questions, I can take those at the end. We're gonna let Jill present hers. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Hi, everyone. So I already introduced myself. I'm Jill. I'm here to present the Flathead Basin Septic Maintenance Reimbursement Program that we've recently developed, which is an exciting new opportunity for you all. So just a little background, kind of Kate went over some of this, but it's really important to get your tank pumped, and you'll want to enhance the longevity of your whole system and save you money in the long run, to prevent backups and malfunctioning, protect community health, so we make sure those pathogens or viruses aren't getting back into our drinking water, and then also to prevent leaching of polluted wastewater into the ground and surface water, because a lot of those nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that Kate mentioned, if they get into surface waters, they can cause harmful algal blooms, which will decrease the value of the water for wildlife, decrease the oxygen in the water, and make it hard to recreate in the water. So we don't want that. So keeping your tank pumped and well maintained really helps water quality in the area. So this is a new program that's offering up to 50% of the cost of your septic tank pumping, or $200 maximum. And it's funded by the Montana Department of Environmental Quality Non-Point Source Management Program through a federal grant under the Section 319 of the Clean Water Act. So basically, this is a program where we're attempting to reduce non-point source pollution to the Flathead Basin. And non-point source means that it can't be easily identified. So a point source would be like coming right out of a pipe from a factory. And septic leachate, or that wastewater that comes out of your drain field, is considered a non-point source. And this program was developed by the Montana Association of Conservation Districts, and we're partnering with local conservation districts, the County Health Department, and DEQ. So there are some eligibility requirements. You have to have your septic system in need of pumping, so hasn't been pumped for at least 3 years. You need to be in close proximity to a body of water, at least 500 feet or less. And then it's not a requirement that you reside within a target watershed, but we have these 3 target watersheds: Spring Creek, Ashley Creek, and Lake Mary Ronan. And folks residing in those areas will receive priority. And that's because these waterways in these areas are deemed impaired by DEQ. So there's already enough pollutants in them that they're either impaired or threatened. So if you're interested in applying, you can either go to the Lake County Conservation District website or the Flathead County Conservation District website and search for our septic maintenance reimbursement program. I kind of circled in the pictures here. Under programs or programs and services, you'll find that tab. And you can find the application instructions and all the forms there. There's an online form as well as a PDF if you prefer to print and mail it in. And you'll send all the hard copy applications to me, as well as reach out to me for any questions. And I'll have my contact info at the end of this presentation. So once you apply and are approved, and when you apply, you should hear back in about 2 weeks. You will choose a local licensed septic pumping company. And on the websites that I mentioned, we have a resource for you to check out a list of your options. And then the pumper will come and do the inspection and the pumping, and they'll help you fill out a reporting form that you'll have to send back to me. And then once you send that reporting form back to me, you will receive your reimbursement. So yeah, that's all the details. Thank you. I hope you'll enroll in this program and help us protect the Flathead Basin. And yeah, if there's any questions for Kate or I, we can move on to that.
Cool. Thank you both so much. There are a ton of questions in the Q&A box, so let's see. Well, the first one that I saw that stood out was Tim asked, are there any recommended systems that are used near wetlands, streams, rivers, or lakes?
Recommend just making sure that they're sited correctly. We have our setbacks, you know, from floodplains, surface water, streams, at least 100 feet. If we can go further back, we prefer that. Sometimes we refer that they need to do a level 2 type system, better treatment. So just making sure that they're sited correctly.
Okay, and then Constanza wanted to know, and you kind of mentioned this briefly, Kate, there was that picture with the 4-foot, I don't know what to call it, but
Yeah, that's underneath the drain field for treatment.
yeah. So the question was, does the county require anything special where groundwater levels are 5 feet or less from the ground? That's the case much throughout the shallow evergreen aquifer.
Right, correct. So one thing with evergreen, that's why back in '93 they were a kind of a target area, and now evergreen's a district, and they go into the city of Kalispell sewer plant because of the high groundwater that we have in the evergreen area. We want at least a minimum 4 feet separation from groundwater to the surface for a septic system. And at that point, we could probably permit an engineered sand mound, which is an above ground system. So we're looking at 4 feet separation there.
Cool. Someone asked for clarification about the dye test.
Okay, so we do a dye test if we feel that there might have a failed septic system, and they aren't quite sure it's theirs or is it a neighbor's, because there might be a lot of septic systems close by. So what we've done is we've got certain color dyes, so we can maybe do 3 or 4 different types of dyes, and then we can find out whose septic system it is and locate by, you know, putting a blue one down or an orange one down, somebody else's tank, and then we can identify who's responsible for that failed drain field.
Cool. This question's about the difference in between pressure systems and gravity systems in terms of how long they last.
There hasn't really, like I said, 2005 is when we started doing pressure dose. It was mandated by our Board of Health. So I don't know if we really have any evidence as to what lasts longer. We just know that with a pressure dose system, you get even distribution. And I think you've seen a couple slides there where some of the drain field was lush and other parts of the drain field it wasn't getting anything. You wouldn't see that on a properly functioning drain field that's pressure dose because it's distributed throughout the whole drain field.
Cool, thanks, Kate. You also talked about this, but someone was asking about gardening over the drain field, and then you had mentioned how you want to stick with plants that have shallow roots, but they asked, is it safe to eat produce grown over the drain field?
You know, that is a good question, and I don't really have an answer for that one. Maybe that somebody at the conservation district might have something on that. I'm not a gardener.
If Haley or Sam, you want to add anything about that? If not, then we can skip to the next question. It seems like a complicated question.
Yeah.
Well, I'll add that I've heard from other experts that shallow rooted things, or if you are doing like raised bed gardening, is safe over a primary drain field, but that you should be okay with just about anything over what is cited as a secondary drain field, because that's probably not being actively used.
Right,
So
correct.
what you see on your permit and your records, you can kind of plan accordingly.
Good.
Thank you, Haley. Okay, so are there any qualified contractors that actually check old drain fields versus just the tank to see if they're still functional? It would take someone checking the soil 3 feet below the drain system or clogging in the pipes.
Yeah, then they'd have to dig below the drain field, so that would compromise your drain field. You know, we've got our septic pumpers that can do that. They can check out the lines of the drain field and again, the tank. But as far as going below your drain field, you're compromising your drain field. So no, we don't have anybody to do that.
Okay.
Hey, Kate, I have a related question for you. If you do have a failed septic drain field, are you then looking at addressing that by relocating a drain field? Are there ways to rehabilitate the drain field? I imagine that there's a lot of people that don't have the space to, you know,
Right.
plop a new drain field in on their property. Are there ways to rehabilitate it or, you know, rebuild that soil profile?
No, there isn't any way to rebuild it. The reason why it's failed is most likely it's saturated and our soils are time to move on, move into a different site, and then we can regenerate that site over years. This takes time. If they don't have the area for a new drain field, we've had to dig out the old soils and replace with suitable soils in that area. But yeah, once those soils become saturated and kind of used up, let's say, time to move, if we have room, just moving to a different area of the property. One of the things that we ask for through the subdivision process now is they have to have a primary and a secondary location before they can have it in approval through the DEQ, because we know drain fields don't last forever and they want to make sure there's room to replace that drain field when it does fail. And then, you know, let's say another 20 years, the secondary drain field fails, well, then they can swap it over to the first area because it regenerates over time.
Thanks, Kate. This question is super specific. I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. So my lawn, Lisa asked, my lawn is depressed in a 6-foot circle, about 10 feet where the drain pipe leaves the house. Any suggestion as to why this is happening? Has not changed over the last 2 years. Home is a vacation home out of state, used infrequently.
Yeah, I'd have to probably look at the permit and see what was installed and see how it was installed. So without a little more information and what the system is, I couldn't really tell her.
Thanks. Someone asked for recommendations for new construction on the shore of Flathead Lake.
Recommendations for?
I'm assuming for building their septic system.
So recommend that we go on site to do a site evaluation to determine what can be done. We want to make sure that we have do a correct site, soils profile, siting of distance, slopes, bedrock. There's numerous things that we look at on siting the drain field.
Haley, if you see a question that I skipped through, you can definitely go back to it.
So does Jill have any of these, or are they all mine?
I think they're mostly for you, Kate. I think
Well,
everyone's already bought into the septic share program.
Oh,
So.
good.
I had a question for Jill quick. I was just wondering if there's a deadline for applications.
No, as of now, there's no deadline. There will be a limit to how many applications based on how much funding we have we can accept. So kind of as the program goes along throughout the course of the summer, we'll probably put updates on the website if we're getting close or something, or we need to prioritize some folks over others, and if the application period changes at all.
Okay, so first come, first serve, and I should go ahead and get my application in.
Absolutely.
Someone asked how often the pump should be, how often to pump the tank if it's for a 2-person household. And yeah, you kind of mentioned what would happen when it needed to be pumped, but is there some sort of like general timeline?
Well, we say anywhere from 3 to 5 years, but your septic pumper can let you know if it's looking good and if you need to, back off on pumping it. If it's just 2 people living in a household, and depending on what you're putting down your drain, are you putting a lot of grease down it? Because maybe you'll need to pump it more. So again, I rely on your septic pumper too to look at it, and they can assess that.
Cool, thank you. Someone wanted clarification about when you said the tank surfacing was an indication of failure. And then they said, did you mean the tank actually rising up? I don't think that's what you meant, but you can clarify that.
Tank surfacing. We have seen some tanks where they pop out of the ground because of high groundwater. And I think in the Pablo area, they've seen quite a bit of that a few years back when they had some high groundwater issues and people were pumping their tanks. And then when they were pumping their tanks, of course, the tank would pop out of the ground. So you don't really want to be pumping a tank when you've got high groundwater in the springtime, because your tanks will pop out.
Got it. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And then let's see. Someone wanted, Jonah asked the difference between gravelless and gravel system.
Okay, the gravelless were the black domes. You don't need gravel in your trenches. They're called the gravelless chambers. Again, you still use pipe all the way through it, and there's still pressure dose, and the pipe are hung on top of the inside the gravelless chambers. We use about, most of our systems anymore, about 95% of all drain fields are gravel. We don't see a whole lot of people using the chambers. The cost for them is probably more so than using gravel. And we have seen in Flathead County, we've seen more failures with the gravelless chambers. Just because we have a biomass that builds up in them in certain types of soils. They're good in more of the cobbly, sandy loams, but with your tighter soils, we've seen more failures, and with the sandy material too, sandy soils, we've seen more failures in those. So people pretty much stick with the gravelless or the gravel systems for generations. It's like, just stick with what works.
Sounds good. Stick with what works. I like that. What should we do with wastewater from our water softener?
So you could put a little system out on wherever in your yard, like a dry well. So when it back flushes, you've got that brine, that salty brine that would just go into a little dry well, rocks and that.
Okay. Just a couple more questions, unless if anyone wants to answer or ask something live, they can also raise their hand. It's an option still. We actually already asked that, so there's only one left. How deep should leach lines be buried?
So maximum 3 feet, and then our minimum is 12 feet. But depending on where they're at in the valley, we've got high groundwater. So that's one of the things we do on these site evaluations and siting drain fields and looking at the soils profile. We want to make sure we're siting the drain field. They've got to have that 48-inch separation from groundwater. So that's why with these test holes that we do when we go out siting, we want to go down 8 feet for these test holes. So we look at the soils profile. So we can let people know if they can go 3 feet with their drain field laterals or not. So that's can be kind of tricky at times. I hope that wasn't too confusing.
No worries. All right.
Okay. People have this too on, you know, they can call me up or, and I didn't put my email on that, but they can shoot me an email too if they've got something. We do have some good articles on our website too that the EPA has put out on drain fields. So there's some good articles on why we do what we do and siting of drain fields.
Awesome. Yeah. And yeah, it's exciting that that program that Jill is working on will continue to improve the situation in the valley. Super cool.
Yeah.
If no one else has any other questions, we will call it a night. Thank you, Kate and Jill, so much. Super informative. And yeah, we are happy to have you.
All right. Great. Thanks.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. And there's one more webinar next Wednesday.
Okay, good.
Yep. And one more reminder to submit that survey that's going to be emailed to all of you. So thank you. Have a good night, Jill and Kate, Haley and Sam.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
See ya.
Have a good night.
Yeah.